of Israel's daily briefing. Today is Sunday, November 9th, day 765 of the war. I'm your host, Amanda Borschel-Dan, here with our military correspondent, Emanuel Fabian. Manny, thank you so much for joining me as we launch our week again.
Hi, Amanda.
So Hamas has announced that the body of IDF officer Lieutenant Hadar Goldin, which has been held by the terror organization since 2014, Hamas has announced that they will return the body to Israel at 2 p.m. today. We will learn about the strange operation to recover what they're calling is Hadar Goldin's body that occurred yesterday. We'll also learn what is happening with the 200-some-odd Hamas gunmen that are trapped in a tunnel in IDF-controlled Gaza. We'll hear updates about the ongoing Hollywood-esque saga with the former military advocate general who is embroiled in an obstruction of justice scandal. And we'll learn why Defense Minister Israel Katz has declared the Egyptian border a closed military zone. All of this and more when we're back.
I always say, if there's one thing we need to do really well, it's delight the customer. Our goal is for everything we do to quietly fade into the background so the customer simply thinks, wow, that was really easy. What's made this journey so meaningful is the ongoing challenge of delivering personal connection and thoughtful, tailored service in a virtual world. And especially now, that connection feels more important than ever. We're one nation, one family. When we heard about Hayalim getting engaged and planning quick weddings, we knew we wanted to help, so we gifted them beautiful ketubas, a small but heartfelt thank you for their courage, their protection, and all they're doing for Am Yisrael. We hear it all the time. People are saying, this is the best company I've ever worked with. And honestly, that comes down to one thing, the care each team member puts into every single order.
I'm Amanda Borschel-Dan here with our military correspondent, Emanuel Fabian. So many IDF officer Lieutenant Hadar Goldin was killed and his body was captured by terrorists during Operation Protective Edge in 2014. And Hamas today has announced that what they are calling his remains will be returned to Israel at 2 p.m. So I guess the first question has to be, how secure is Israel that these are indeed the remains of Hadar Goldin?
So Israeli officials do believe that Hamas intends to return his body, but of course nothing is final until the remains are brought to the Abu Kabir Forensic Institute and properly identified. Again, we're talking about a body that was abducted 11 years ago now. So it may take slightly longer than the hostages who were taken on October 7th, who we've seen, at least in the past few weeks, they're normally identified within a few hours, at most a day, but it could take a little bit longer, depending on the condition of the remains, of course. But Israel does believe that Hamas intends to return his body. They've announced today that they will return his body, but of course Hamas has in the past, at least in one case, claimed to have returned a body of a hostage, and it turned out not to be. They made some sort of mistake, or they were playing some sort of game with Israel. So of course it's not final until it is actually final.
Tell us just very, very briefly, what was Operation Protective Edge back in 2014?
So there was the 2014 Gaza war. It was launched after Hamas. There was the kidnapping of the three boys in the West Bank by Hamas, and then Hamas began launching rockets at Israel, and then Israel then launched this counteroffensive in the Strip. And the incident with Hadar Goldin is there was a humanitarian ceasefire, a 72-hour one, on August 1st, 2014. And just about an hour into the ceasefire, in the morning, Hamas operatives emerged from a tunnel in the Rafah area and attacked a IDF position where troops of the Givati Brigade's reconnaissance unit were stationed. They killed 3 soldiers, including Goldin, and dragged Goldin's body back into the tunnel. And they've held his body since. His family was able to hold a funeral because the army was able to determine that he was indeed killed that day. I think it was about a month later they were able to determine. But of course, his body or his remains have been held by Hamas since then, since the 2014 war. And at the time, At least, before October 7th, Hamas was also holding onto the body of Oron Shaul, another soldier, and two living hostages, Hisham Asayed and Avera Mengistu. Avera and Hisham were released in the hostage release deal earlier this year, and the remains of Oron Shaul were actually recovered by the army during the war. I know that the IDF has also been attempting to locate the remains of Goldin, although apparently unsuccessfully, since Hamas was the ones that had to go find it.
Right. So let's talk about this. And as you said, Hadar Goldin was killed in southern Gaza Strip in the Rafah area in a tunnel. And indeed, from what we understand in the operation yesterday, his remains were recovered from a tunnel in southern Gaza in the Rafah area. So what do you know about this kind of curious operation?
So like other bodies of hostages that have been recently recovered, the army has, or I would say Israel more officially, has allowed Hamas members alongside the Red Cross to enter IDF-held areas of Gaza to then search for the bodies and recover them. So according to the footage that was published by Al Jazeera showing this recovery operation, it took place in Rafah, in sort of the Junaina area or Yibna area. It's these neighborhoods that are in the, I would say, more central area of Rafah, but close actually to the Egyptian border. There's an army post that is very close to this area of the tunnel where they recovered the body from, and it does appear that the army has operated in the surrounding area, so it wouldn't surprise me if the IDF has tried at least to locate the body in that area previously, but evidently I don't think Israel knew this specific location, and therefore Hamas members went in and recovered the body. The question that I have is that this was yesterday and Hamas recovered the body, and then Hamas took the body back to the Hamas-held areas of Gaza instead of just immediately handing it over. There's literally an IDF post several hundred meters away. They could have given it to the Red Cross and then handed it over to the army immediately, but Hamas likes to do its whole thing, and Israel apparently and allowed this and approved of this. But a day later, they are planning on returning it. And we've seen several times Hamas cross the yellow line with Israel's approval to go and search for the bodies of the hostages that evidently Israel couldn't find on its own.
From what we understand, there are also some 200 Hamas gunmen who are basically trapped in tunnels in the IDF-controlled southern Gaza Strip. And could this be part of the, bargaining chip of Hadar's Goldin body in order to perhaps get them out of this area of the Gaza Strip?
So that's what has been been brought up a few times in the last week or so. So in Rafah, in the Jneina neighborhood, there's around 150 Hamas gunmen who are trapped in a tunnel network. And defense officials said that Goldin's body is being held in that area, possibly not in the specific tunnel with the gunmen, but in that area where these gunmen are trapped. And there were all sorts of reports of the US pressuring Israel to allow these gunmen to head back to the Hamas-held areas. We heard the IDF chief of staff telling political officials that Israel would allow them or consider allowing them to return if they return the body of Goldin. And then the prime minister saying they would not allow them to return, and we shouldn't allow any extra side deals. So right now we're seeing Hamas return the body of Goldin. Potentially we'll know this afternoon. But we haven't really seen any announcement of some sort of deal or amnesty for these terrorists who are trapped in the IDF-held areas. Remains to be seen what will happen with them. But if, in a couple of days, we suddenly hear a report that these gunmen are now being let free back to the Hamas-held areas by the army, then I think it's safe to assume that these two events are somewhat tied together, possibly by US pressure.
Just to clarify, Manny, these 150, shall we say, Hamas gunmen are in a tunnel underground and are basically being trapped there instead of being arrested or anything of that nature. They are still underground in the tunnel?
Yeah, so they're still there, and we've seen cases in the past few weeks of them emerging from the tunnels in some areas and attacking IDF troops. 3 soldiers who were killed in Rafah in 2 separate incidents. Those were the gunmen who carried it out. And there's speculation as to why Israel hasn't gone in and just demolished the tunnel with them in it. One is that because Goldin's body is being held there, they don't want to potentially lose it, but also Israel evidently didn't know where the body exactly was, and there's an assumption that some of those terrorists did know where the body was, so they don't want to kill them or destroy that sort of intelligence, the potential of them knowing where the body is that could help Israel find it. So that's why. And also, of course, the US has been pressuring Israel to have them released back to the Hamas-held areas, so Israel doesn't want to go in and just kill all of these gunmen in the tunnels and then anger the US, because Israel's not supposed to be taking offensive actions during the ceasefire. However, it is operating in the areas held by the, over the yellow line on the Israeli side, demolishing tunnels in the Israeli-held area. So it's a bit of a difficult situation for Israel, what it can and can't do during the ceasefire.
Let's turn to Lior Rudaeff, whose body was returned overnight Friday, Saturday, and on Saturday morning, the family was notified that it was indeed Lior Rudaeff's body. He was held by Palestinian Islamic Jihad, if I'm not mistaken, Manny. Is that correct?
Correct. When he was killed on October 7th, he was battling Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorists who invaded his kibbutz near Yitzhak. And they then abducted his body to Gaza and were holding him. And when we saw the announcement, initially we saw an announcement by Islamic Jihad that they intend to return a body. And then Hamas afterwards announced, so Islamic Jihad likely handed it over to Hamas because Hamas always leads the transfers of the bodies. But yes, Rudaeff was the deputy security coordinator at Nir Yitzhak. He was a member of the civil defense squad. He and other members of the team were killed during this battle, defending their community on October 7th. And then his body was taken by Islamic Jihad to Gaza. From what I understand, of the remaining 5 hostages in Gaza, the bodies, of course, also Meni Goddard was also abducted by Islamic Jihad. So I think that leaves just one more hostage being held by Islamic Jihad, whereas the others are being held by Hamas, if I'm not mistaken.
Manny, Israel is also holding some bodies of terrorists, and I just wondered, do you have any sense of how many? How
many in total, I'm not sure, but for every hostage body that is returned, Israel gives back 15 bodies of Palestinians. I wouldn't say always terrorists, because Israel sometimes just collects lots of bodies during operations in Gaza. It's not always certain that all of them were in combat or not. But essentially, Gazans who were killed and Israel collected their bodies are then returned. There's also been cases where the army has taken bodies from Gaza to check if they belong to hostages and then send them back. But that's essentially the deal, is 15 bodies for every hostage body that is returned to Israel.
And of course, the body of Yahya Sinwar is not on the table for negotiation at this point.
Neither Yahya Sinwar or his brother, Mohammed Sinwar, Israel also has his body, and there's several other top Hamas commanders that Israel has killed and taken their bodies. As far as I understand, none of those are currently on the table. It's possible that the bodies of terrorists that Israel killed on October 7th, some of those are being returned. Israel captured around 1,600 bodies of terrorists on October 7th. And some of those have been returned, as far as I understand.
And so other bodies could be from previous operations or from previous incursions, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Yes, also from before October 7th, there were various incidents on the Gaza border in the previous years, not even going back to the previous wars, but attempts by Hamas to carry out attacks on the border, and Israel killed terrorists and took their bodies. It's possible that those were also returned as part of this deal and the current ceasefire.
Let's go to a short break.
On October 7, I was here at the Nova Music Festival. I ran for my life, hid for 7 hours. Terrorists shot me twice. Thankfully, I survived. I'm still dealing with trauma, and I'm not alone. 3 million Israelis are in trauma. They need mental health care or physical rehabilitation. Wounded soldiers, families, and scared children.
Since 1912, Hadassah has been a life-changing force in Israel. Today, Hadassah has 2 world-renowned hospitals, pioneers breakthrough medical research, cares for youth, and has built the much-needed and largest rehabilitation facility in Jerusalem.
Thank you to everyone at Hadassah Hospitals. You've been helping me and so many others. And a special thanks to one nurse, my mom. I love you.
And we're back. I'm Amanda Borschel-Dan here with our military correspondent, Emanuel Fabian. Now, Manny, former military advocate general, Major General Yifat Tomer Yerushalmi was hospitalized this morning, and this comes a day after her elusive phone was discovered on a Tel Aviv beach by some beachgoers. This is a crazy story. Let's go over it a little bit just to catch our listeners up to speed if they haven't been listening this past week. So essentially, Tomer Yerushalmi has been arrested for obstruction of justice, among other things, for leaking a video of alleged abuse of a Palestinian security prisoner at the State Teman facility by some IDF reserve soldiers. That case is ongoing, and now her case is, of course, ramping up. So tell us a little bit about what's happened in the past few days on this case.
So Yifat Tomer Yerushalmi was detained. She was brought before the court. The investigation is ongoing, but now she's been released to house arrest. She was held in the Neve Tirza prison for several days, but now she's under house arrest. And then overnight, something happened. She was feeling unwell. There's been various reports as to what happened. She was taken to hospital. As far as I understand, she's in okay condition and nothing too serious as far as we know, but again, the drama doesn't really stop. But at the same time as she being released to house arrest, this woman who was at the Hatzuk beach, it's near Herzliya, it's just north of Tel Aviv, found an iPhone in the sand in the shallow waters of the beach. She picked it up, she turned it on, and she sees a picture of the military advocate general as the lock screen wallpaper. The police were called, the officers reached the scene and took the phone. And from what we're hearing from police sources is, in fact, this is her phone. There's some theories as to what exactly happened. Can an iPhone survive for 5 days in the sea? Potentially. I mean, iPhones are waterproof, but there's all sorts of talk about corrosion because of the seawater being salty. So I think, technically speaking, it is possible that the phone survived. It did have battery, which raises another question. But the theory that explains that is maybe the phone was off the entire time for the 5 days, which does make some sense. But I've heard another theory is that maybe this is some sort of police tactic to try and get something out of people involved in the case. Maybe they planted the phone there to try and see if other suspects in the case start making moves or doing something. But either way, it is her phone for sure. That is what police are saying. How did it get there exactly? Is it the phone that the military advocate general tried to get rid of there when she went missing about a week ago? Or if this is some sort of other conspiracy being conducted by police. Of course, I don't know exactly, but either way, the police have the code to the phone as far as I understand, and then they can go through it and look for whatever evidence is on there. It is thought that she tried to get rid of her phone because of incriminating evidence on it. We'll now soon find out, I suppose, if there is anything on there, and if there's things missing on there, that of course is even more serious because that means she tried to delete or some sort of evidence that may be related to the case. But of course, we'll have to find out when this investigation is ongoing. And right now she's under house arrest, but that could obviously change if they find new evidence to try and bring her, and then bring her back into prison again.
I mean, we're hearing more and more evidence from various people to whom she lied, who are, aghast and just really saddened as well, I think is a word that MK Yuli Edelstein used. He was, of course, the head of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, and Tomer Yerushalmi gave evidence to him and lied to his face. The scandal continues, obviously, just on that level, if not for, the incredible commercial that she just made for Apple for the iPhone and its indestructibility. But what can you tell us about the replacement military advocate general?
So right now, there isn't a military advocate general. It's a vacant position. And in addition, essentially the entire top command of the military advocate general cause is vacant because there are other senior officers like the deputy Galasael, Brigadier General Galasael. He's been suspended and he's been sent to house arrest. And he's also, in addition to being the deputy, he's the chief of the International Law Division, which is, a very significant role in the unit. He's gone. The military prosecutor, the former one, is detained and also I think maybe sent to house arrest. So he's not there. So it's a bit of a big mess right now. Defense Minister Israel Katz appointed Itai Ophir. He's the former legal advisor to the Defense Ministry, to be the next military advocate general, but it may take some time to actually get him into the role. There's a few legal technicalities, which I won't bother going into, to basically allow him in the role. So the IDF Chief of Staff said that he will appoint some acting military advocate general in the meantime to allow the unit to continue functioning so that it can give legal advice to the Chief of Staff, so it can prosecute soldiers and do whatever it needs to do normally. And meanwhile, while this unit is in complete disarray, Eyal Zamir, the IDF Chief of Staff, placed the military advocate general cause under the command of the personnel directorate chief, Major General Dado Bar Khalifa. He's not entitled to conduct any legal actions. He can't, do really anything with the unit. It's mainly in a technical sense that he's responsible for the unit and commanding it. So if there's an acting commander in place of Yifat Tomer Yerushalmi, then he would be the one that they answer to and deal with things on a command level. And then hopefully soon enough, Itai Ophir will be sort of re-enlisted in the army. He was a combat officer in both in the standing army and reserves, but he also needs to be promoted to major general and become a military attorney, and it's a bit of a complicated process, but eventually that will happen, and then hopefully the unit will be sort of stabilized again and it will have its independence back again.
So on Thursday, Defense Minister Israel Katz declared war, this time on smuggling and drugs and weapons smuggling via drones on the Egyptian border. So, Manny, this is something we've been covering for almost a year now, the uptick of smuggling over the Egyptian border. And a lot of it is happening through these drones. What can you tell us about what's actually going on above the ground in this case?
So we have been seeing for more than a year now smuggling on the Egyptian border, and years before that, drug smuggling was quite popular. Suspects put a ladder up on the fence and throw over a package of drugs, and then it's collected by smugglers on the Israeli side. That would happen for years, and it was difficult to combat it, but the army eventually managed to clamp down. And then instead, the smugglers learned a new technique, which is buying an off-the-shelf drone, these heavy-duty ones that are usually used for agriculture. They can load up dozens of handguns on it, or several assault rifles, or even machine guns we saw recently. And then suspects on the Israeli side fly the drone over to the Egyptian side. On the Egyptian side, the smugglers load it up with the weapons, and then they fly it back, they pilot it back essentially to the Israeli side, and then they collect the weapons. The army's been trying to deal with this, I would say unsuccessfully. They foil about, 1 or 2 or 3 a week of these attempts, and who knows how many are actually flying over and going undetected. I saw a report that on one weekend there were 500 drones that crossed the border, and I saw another one that said that over a few months there were 2,000 drones that crossed the border. So really crazy numbers. I don't know how correct they are, but I think it is true to say that the army is not getting all of them. And in response to this, the defense minister held a meeting. The IDF Chief of Staff also held a meeting to basically decide on actions to take to actually combat this issue of these weapons that are just flowing into Israel via drones. The defense minister announced that the army would declare a closed military zone along the entire border. It hasn't really happened yet. The army hasn't announced a new closed military zone yet. But what that will do is that will give the army more freedom to act against people entering that area. So if a suspect arrives at the border, then the army can stop them or shoot them because they're entering a closed military zone. Hopefully Israel will be able to enforce it. The army, meanwhile, is working on new, I would say, defensive solutions to detect the drones, to shoot them down better, all sorts of technologies that will come into play to thwart these attempts. And another thing that's interesting is that the defense minister spoke to the Shin Bet, and the Shin Bet will then declare that these attempts to smuggle weapons will actually be considered terrorism. And that will give them more tools or different tools to use against suspects in the cases, instead of considering it a criminal offense. If it's considered terrorism, then there are more actions that the Shin Bet can take to try and combat it.
Okay, I have a couple questions for you here. Number one, we have, of course, heard of car chases and even deaths of these smugglers on the Israeli side of the border. And if I'm not mistaken, this is being carried out mostly by the Caracal unit, which is a mixed male and female unit. And most of these units are not meant to be seeing any kind of battle, right? They're meant to be more defensive than offensive, as far as I understand it, these mixed units. So is the army making a recalculation here of where it's deploying Caracal, for example?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's basically the Egyptian border is dealt with by the Paran Regional Brigade, and that includes both Caracal and Bardelas. And they're sometimes bolstered by the police, by border police forces and other units. The army thinks that they're doing a relatively good job in defending, and I think it's in Caracal that the army has the all-female tank company as well. They're meant to conduct defensive operations, and I think this is mostly defensive. It's defending the border. It's preventing smugglers from crossing. It's preventing these drones from crossing. I don't think they're going to suddenly replace them with other units. The whole point, I think, of Caracal and Bardelas when they were established more than a decade ago now was to basically replace the standing army units that would normally go there. Normally, Nahal and Givati and Golani would be deployed to those borders for months, conducting defensive operations. I think what they have now is good, but the main, I think the weak points for the army is being able to detect these drones and being able to shoot them down, all these technological advances that need to be made to actually deal with these drones themselves, because the soldiers, they know how to shoot. They can deal with a suspect when they see one. But it gets more complicated when there's these small drones. They're not very loud. They're very difficult sometimes to detect, and they fly over the border freely, and it's very hard to deal with them.
And is there any sense, is it a specific population who is conducting the smuggling? Meaning, could it be a population that has relatives on both sides of the border? Is that the profile that they're looking into? Do you know?
Yeah, that is the profile. And, from speaking to police in the past about this, it's generally from the Bedouin community in the south. Not exclusively, but generally is. And that is mainly because they have contact with the Bedouin community on the other side in the Sinai Peninsula as well. So it's usually that profile type, but of course not exclusively. And there's been cases of Jewish crime organizations also being involved in such smuggling events.
For sure. Manny, really fascinating. And listeners, please check out our live blog for more information on this and all the other topics that we covered today. Thank you so much, Manny.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's Daily Briefing. Please check out another episode tomorrow. This installment was produced by the Podwaves. If you have any questions or comments about this or any other episode, please drop us an email to podcast@timesofisrael.com. Until tomorrow, shalom.